Hi, Senator Gallagher. My question is for Professor Kelly, if that's okay.
Yep. Go.
Professor Kelly, given that there is such a low risk of children getting severely ill from COVID and dying from COVID, how can you justify the rollout for 5 to 11-year-olds, given that the trial data consisted of two groups of around 1,500 each? The second group, the FDA in its report hadn't yet finished reviewing, so I haven't been able to read its data. But given that 1,500 is such a small sample size, and that the actual trial only went for a short period of time, a couple of months, and then they only followed up for about 2.5 weeks after the second dose, don't you think we should wait before we even consider rolling out the children, given that we need to see more evidence?
Thank you for the question, Senator. So, as I mentioned, and I may not have been quite as clear as I would, so just to make sure I've got the record correct, I did mention a number of 22,222 children in that age group who have contracted COVID. That's this year, from 1st of January to 21st of November 2021. You're quite right that of those, only a very small number, 1.4% in fact, have been hospitalised, and less than 0.05% have been in ICU, and we've had, unfortunately, a death in someone who had many other illnesses. So the severity is there's no doubt, and we've never said anything differently, that the severity is less in younger people compared with older people. But we've found over recent times, particularly in Victoria, and any parents on the call would know how disruptive it is when there are children when children in a classroom, for example, are infected. And this is not a trivial infection for many of those people. So it can affect school. It's already been very much disrupted for the last 2 years. Particularly in those in the 3 jurisdictions that have had and continue to have outbreaks. We know that in many areas, and this is very well documented globally as well as here in Australia, that children do transmit the virus. So that's something that's come with later variants. Certainly Delta is like that, I suspect, and we already have evidence in Australia that Omicron will be like this as well. That children can transmit the virus effectively and efficiently. And just to take the example of the recent Omicron cases that started with a single person who was infected in a climbing gym in southwest Sydney. Within a week, it has got into 2 schools. Both of those schools are closed in Sydney. It's got into a school, Lynham School here in the ACT. There has been casual contact through the ACT to Gundaroo. So children are transmitters of this virus. The vaccine does, and we know can affect that transmission. It's not only about the protection from severe illness. In terms of the small sample size, you're quite correct. That was something we wanted to see more information than what was originally presented from the clinical trials in the US. That's one reason why we've been cautious and watching what's happening in the US. And I mentioned earlier, you may not have been on the call at that point, but myself and others from the department, the TGA and ATAGI met with colleagues from the US today to hear about their experience of over 5 million doses in that exact age group. So recognising we have about 2.3 million in that age group in Australia, that's a substantial sample size, who they've been following very closely and carefully for vaccine side effects and have not really found anything at all severe. And even those myocarditis cases that we are wanting to know about, there was only 4 in that over 5 million doses. So, so an extremely rare event. All of those were mild, short-lived and self-cured.
Okay, so in regards to the transmission, though, you have to admit that the vaccines haven't stopped transmission. We know that the Omicron variant came to Australia through vaccinated arrivals. So, and, plenty of people, it's well known now that vaccinated people transmit the virus as well. And so I don't necessarily buy into that. And the other argument that children can't go to school, well, that's, you're trying to put a pharmaceutical solution to a political problem. So I'm not really sure that's correct as well.